Hi, and welcome back to Focal Point on AFR Talk, the most feared and dangerous radio network in all the land. Welcome aboard the USS Focal Point, our patrol boat in which we patrol the choppy waters of America's public life, looking for the intersection of truth and politics. Our commander is on the bridge. The scriptures, our nautical charts, the Holy Spirit, our navigator, and I serve as your loyal, humble, and cheerful first mate. And we're honored to welcome aboard the USS Focal Point a man who's been a guest on Focal Point before, Hans von Spakovsky. He is a senior legal fellow at the Heritage Foundation. We're going to talk election stuff, and I want to give you just a little bit of Hans' credentials to talk about the electoral process. He served for 2 years as a member of the Federal Election Commission, the FEC. That's the authority charged with enforcing campaign finance laws. He also worked at the Justice Department as counsel to the Assistant Attorney General for Civil Rights and specialized in the Voting Rights Act and the Help America Vote Act of 2002. So when it comes to all things electoral, Hans von Spakovsky is the go-to guy. And Hans, welcome back to Focal Point with Brian Fisher.
Well, Brian, thanks for having me on. It's an interesting day to be talking about elections with everything going on with the weather.
Well, and that's what I wanted to ask you about. I've got several other things I want to talk with you about. I want to talk to you about Somalis in Ohio, and I want to talk about UN monitors in Texas. But I want to start by talking about Hurricane Sandy. There's some speculation out there that the president may use this as an excuse to tamper with the timing of our election, either by extending it, by pushing it back, or something of that sort. Can the president do that?
No, he cannot. Now, we all know that a lack of executive authority has not seemingly stopped him on certain issues in the past, but the president has no authority to delay the election. The dates of the election under the Constitution, as you know, are set by Congress, and there are 3 federal statutes that set the time for the Senate, House, and presidential elections for the Tuesday after the first Monday in November, and nowhere in any of those statutes does it say that the president can delay the election for any reason.
So what do you think will happen if he tries? Or do you think there's any chance he would try to monkey with it in some way?
You know, I really don't think he would because, one, he doesn't have the authority to do it, and I think he knows what kind of attack, what kind of political cost, and I think great outrage that might necessarily cause if he tried to do that. Look, the only way this could be done is if Congress called an emergency session, got everybody back to Washington, which in itself might be difficult, and they quickly passed a law that somehow delayed the election because of the hurricane damage.
Now, let me ask you a question. This is a little bit of a detour, but I just want your opinion on this. I really do not like absentee voting in general. I mean, for anybody other than somebody who just simply cannot be present on election day. I think we obviously need to make a way for everybody to participate in the process. You just can't be in town on election day for business or whatever, travel. We've got to make a way for you to participate. But I really do not like this extended early voting, this extended absentee voting. I think it opens up a tremendous potential for fraud. What's your take on that?
Well, no, I actually agree with you. I mean, yes, like you said, obviously we have to have absentee voting for people like our military personnel overseas and people who are too disabled to get to the polling place. But this general trend and push in the last few years to have no-fault absentee balloting, to have extended, early voting for a month before the election, I think it particularly absentee ballots, that is the tool of choice. People who want to steal elections. And from a public policy standpoint, I don't think it's a good idea. Everybody isn't voting with the same base of knowledge. You have people voting before even the first presidential debate has started. I mean, it's just, from a public policy standpoint, I don't think it's a good idea.
Well, when you think about that first debate, Hans, which a lot of observers think completely changed the dynamics of the election.
That's right.
And you had a lot of people, I think it was in Iowa, that had already voted before that first debate had even taken place. So they weren't in a position to be able to benefit from actually seeing Governor Romney for themselves, because that's what affected a lot of people's perceptions. is they had this caricature of Governor Romney that had been painted by the Obama campaign. Then they saw him live, unfiltered, and said, look, that's not the guy that President Obama told us he was. Completely changed the way they looked at him. But some of those people had already voted.
Yeah, and it's too late for them now to change their mind and change their vote. And look, anyone with any experience in our system knows that there are a lot of dynamics that happen in the last 3 weeks before the election. And I never vote until Election Day
well,
because for that very reason.
And Hans, you think about the way this Libya thing is exploding just in the last week or two. That'd be a perfect case in point.
Yeah, no, it exactly is the case in point for this, because all of the information that's been coming out has shown that the administration not only lied about what happened, but didn't take very basic steps that they should have taken to protect our personnel there. And I have to think that there are some people who might consider that when they're casting their vote. But if they already early voted, they already sent in their absentee ballot again, it's too late to change their mind.
Now let's talk about Ohio just for a second. Seeing some polling data that indicates that basically it's neck and neck right now. John Kasich, the governor, saying, hey, we've got some access to some internal polling that indicates Romney is taking the lead there in Ohio. So that thing is obviously in play, and Governor Romney may even have some momentum to take that state. But I read a story this week about the Democrats loading up Somalis who don't even speak English, packing them up in vans, taking them down to polling places, and basically helping them fill out their ballots, translating for them or interpreting for them. No Republicans around to help them interpret. And then I also read that the Secretary of State in the state of Ohio sent an application for an absentee ballot out to every voter in the state of Ohio, which means you can have this massive tangle of paperwork to undo if people wind up either inadvertently or intentionally trying to vote twice, turning in an absentee ballot and then showing up on Election Day and trying to vote again. And the bureaucratic process it's going to take to untangle that. I've been reading some people saying, hey, it may be Thanksgiving before we know who won Ohio if it's close.
Yeah, that was, I have to say, a very foolish decision by the Secretary of State, and why he did that, I don't know. By the way, last week there actually were 3 people indicted in Ohio for, in fact, double voting. They voted twice, including with absentee ballots, to folks who had their names slightly differently spelled but registered twice. Look, we do occasionally get people at the polls who don't speak English well and need interpreters, but that's the kind of situation where you want to be sure that there are poll watchers there who also speak that language, or election officials who speak that language, to be sure that they don't go beyond simply assistance, which is just explaining to people how to vote, as opposed to telling them how to vote. And that's the kind of assistance that's illegal under federal law, but all too often happens in some ethnic communities.
Well, and that was, eyewitnesses were saying, look, that's what these Democrats are doing with these van loads of Somalis. They were instructing them on how to fill out the ballot. Now, if you go to Texas, you've got the Attorney General and Governor Perry's backing him up on this, saying, hey, if these UN monitors come in and they get within 100 feet of a polling place, we're going to arrest them and toss them in jail. I just love that. I mean, you think they would could they get away with that? I mean, what would happen if they did that?
Oh, they could. I mean, the OSCE has already protested it, but the ability to be an observer in a poll is governed entirely by state law. And the federal government has no power to tell states who they can and can't allow in polls. And the fact that the U.S. actually is a member of the Office of Security and Cooperation in Europe, that's the organization sending the observers here, that doesn't mean that they can, on the behalf of states, agree that these observers can be in state polling places. That is totally up to the states to decide whether to allow them in.
One last question. There have been a number of articles written about the possibility of an electoral tie, and there are a number of configurations that would wind up with a result of Romney 269, Obama 269, the Electoral College, that would throw the choice of the president into the House of Representatives. And one question I've got for you, Hans, would it be the current House of Representatives or the newly elected House that would be deciding on the presidents? I haven't been able to get clear on that.
No, I believe it would be the current House, because the by the amendment number 20 to the U.S. Constitution, it says that the term of representatives of the House ends on January 3rd. So that would mean that the House would get together in a lame duck session immediately after the election, and they would make a decision on this. Each state, by the way, would get one vote. So those states controlled by Republicans, obviously, would vote for the Republican representative. Those controlled by Democrats would vote for the Democrat. But it would be the currently elected members of the House who would make the decision.
And I think right now, Republicans control 32 House delegations, and the Democrats only 18, so that would throw the presidency to Governor Romney.
That's right.
One last thing, Hans. We share one thing in common. Jane Meyer of The New Yorker has done an absolute piece of character assassination on the two of us. I just read some of the stuff over the weekend about the hit piece she did on you and John Fund, and I just want to commiserate with you just here in closing and get your response. You know, the New Yorker claims to be this fabulous fact checker. I mean, their whole reputation is built on fact checking. You know, the profile that they did on me had at least 15 errors of fact in the profile. And I know they were errors of fact because he was talking about my life. And I know that she knew better because I told her the truth about those. And yet still 15 errors of fact. I made it into their profile. 30 seconds. It sounds like she did the same thing to you and John Fund.
She did. And in fact, I had the same experience with the fact checker not correcting things that I told her were wrong.
Our guest has been Hans von Spakovsky. He is a senior legal fellow with the Heritage Foundation. Great resource on all things electoral. Hans, always illuminating, always enlightening, always educational. Thank you for taking time to be with us.
Sure, thanks for having me.
Hans von Spakovsky, senior legal fellow with the Heritage Foundation. Great stuff there. Number to call if you want to weigh in, 888-589-8840, 888-589-8840. Weigh in on anything that we have talked about the beginning of the program. If they hated Jesus, they're going to hate us. Being nice is not going to be the key to getting the world to like us, it turns out. Because if you're good, you got to tell the truth. You got to confront evil. That's going to make the world hate you. Talking about electoral fraud, talking about the Libya thing, give us a buzz.